Still, it's nice to reminisce about the good old days when there were 50 of us gathered around the table. Was the Gaither family's long history of public displays of admiration for one another a fabrication? Since their divorce, Bill Gaither has spoken out, and his words have changed the game. After years of concealment, the truth is out. When the doors were closed, what actually occurred? To discover, continue listening. Rumors circulated for a long time that something was wrong with the Gaither family. For religious, family, and church music, many considered the Gaither to be the finest. Bill and his wife appeared to have built a solid marriage in addition to a successful business. The audience cherished their bond and saw it as a symbol of something genuine and unwavering. However, circumstances have evolved since then. Things weren't running as smoothly as they appeared, and there were subtle but noticeable indications of this. Early on, there was relative silence. They began to appear less frequently as a group, and when they did, their communication style changed. They weren't being the amiable performers that the crowd had grown to expect. On stage, fewer chuckles, touches, and serious expressions were exchanged. Subtle, personal shifts that appeared to be normal before began to fade. On the contrary, tension was palpable, and a chasm appeared between them. The initial warning indications of trouble appeared when Bill arrived at an event solo. He was very complimentary of his wife and made it a point to mention her in conversation, describing her as his greatest supporter. However, when questioned about her absence from the event, Bill provided an evasive explanation involving scheduling conflicts. Longtime fans understood that wasn't good enough. It was unusual for Bill to decline questions about his wife so promptly. I began to question things at that moment. Following that, an influx of additional cases began. Various vehicles were observed by onlookers, transporting them to and from performances. Even while performing together, they kept their distance from one another. Their interactions gave the impression that they were acting rather than being in a genuine relationship. To find out what was happening, fans took to social media. Everyone has problems with their relationships from time to time, so some assumed they were simply going through a bad patch. Not everyone was certain. Many viewers noticed that Bill appeared anxious, preoccupied, or otherwise disengaged during his performances. Reports surfaced that he cut his answers short and changed the subject when asked personal questions during interviews. The onset of withdrawal symptoms indicated a serious problem at that point. There were frequent and unexplained delays to events that had been planned for months. Bill, who had a soft spot for his pals, began to withdraw from social gatherings. There may not have been any official pronouncements, but the trend was clear. Their careers and personal lives would be impacted by something nefarious happening behind the scenes. The chatter continued, and the stories became increasingly bizarre. Some claimed that disagreements arose because of financial matters and strategic decisions that had an impact on their company. Rumor has it that some married couples found their marriages particularly challenging due to a major argument with close friends or members of their inner circle. Some even went so far as to say that the growing distance between them was a test of their faith brought on by uncertainties and disagreements regarding the future of their work. Reports that nobody wanted to believe were the ones that shocked people the most. Rumors of infidelity have been circulating since then, and they seem to be growing stronger by the week. They were supposedly more than just feuding over jobs or egos, according to those who knew them. Someone had betrayed their trust, they claimed. Despite the lack of evidence, fans believed it might be true. Rumor has it that Bill's wife has been acting strangely recently, appearing uncomfortable whenever the subject of their marriage came up and avoiding eye contact in public. Someone noticed that Bill seemed different, less approachable and distant from those around him. As word spread, the stories grew in prominence. Bill and his wife chose to remain silent in the face of the rumors, which did not help matters. Their silence only made matters worse. There were some who clung to the faint hope that everything was all right and that these rumors were all in good spirits and speculation. However, not everyone was certain. They had a sneaking suspicion that something was happening behind closed doors, and that word would get out soon. Out of nowhere, everything escalated. A major event that would alter the course of history was about to transpire. The truth would shock everyone when it came out. Lord, we beg you to make us good citizens. In fact, we've already declared our intention to get an A in this class. Do you recall that, junior high class? An A plus in civics. No matter what, we will wear the mask and overcome this challenge. I believe we are. So, you seem to be in good health, and that's great. I'm glad you're being disciplined. We want to be friends for a very long time. She's a fantastic cook, and we put on a few pounds while we were in the kitchen together. We've been staying in, which is great because our housekeeper, Angie, takes us grocery shopping and to the pharmacy, so we've only seen our relatives. Yes, she affirmed. That night changed everything. Bill Gaither pretended it was just another night. He had been out late at a secret meeting with close friends and co-workers. Despite his hectic schedule, he mustered up the courage to show up, smiling as if everything was fine in his life. However, the truth was that he had been experiencing an eerie sensation for months, as if he couldn't quite shake it. He rationalized it by telling himself that his worries were causing him to dwell on trivial matters, but he knew better. As he drove home, a lot was going through his head. He reflected on how things felt different lately, how distant he and his wife actually were, not just in his head. Something was clearly wrong because she avoided looking at him. They spoke less, and there was a subtle tension where there had been laughter. He tried to convince himself that every marriage goes through tough patches, but tonight he couldn't shake his worries. He pulled into the driveway late at night, and the only light in the house was the dim living room. Bill made a face. His wife would usually go to bed early when he had late meetings, but tonight she remained awake. Upon exiting the car, he shuffled to the front door, his shoes crunching on the dirt. He immediately sensed something was amiss. From across the room, he could hear soft, close-knit laughter, a sound he hadn't heard in quite some time. This startled him, and he remained motionless in the hallway, his heart pounding so hard against his ribs. With his hands clenched, he cautiously advanced, and then he saw it. His wife was being held by another woman. He felt as if time stood still around him. His breath caught in his throat. The room shrank to a smaller and smaller size, and in an effort to clear his head, he blinked, hoping that the dim light was only a trick of his eyes. His wife, however, drew back in surprise, her face turning pale. The other woman stepped away quickly, her expression betraying her guilt. Bill struggled to catch his breath. His heart pounded in his ears, and he was prepared to speak, but he struggled to find the right words. While his thoughts raced through memories, he felt his body go limp as he tried to decipher the meaning of the signs he had disregarded for so long. Ernie, it is truly a privilege that you all have agreed to participate in this project. Putting together an entire work based on the words of just one person is, well, incredible. I must say this project is absolutely stunning. Your comment regarding the use of cottages as locations for prayer meetings is intriguing. During this time when a lot of us have been home more than we have chosen maybe, and a lot of people with little kids have had to homeschool, home entertain, home play games, home exercise, all as a part of home life. But, I think that if we are open to it, it makes our lives richer. I don't understand. The other woman looked nervously between them, as if she didn't know what to do. Bill felt an imaginary sharp pain in his chest, a pain of betrayal, shame, and wrath. A lot of emotions were racing through his mind, but the most important question remained unanswered. His voice was so low it was barely a whisper, but it sliced through the silence like a knife. His wife hesitated before answering. She opened her mouth to speak, but she said nothing. It appeared as though someone had caught her when she didn't expect her. I don't know how long. This time his voice was stronger, but he barely knew it was his. His wife jumped. Bill, how long? His tone became strained. The weight of the moment was heavy on him. The fact that she was uncertain was enough. He knew the answer. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a passing phase. This was real, and it had been happening behind his back while he was blind to it. His anger obscured his vision. He rarely let go of things, but he was on the verge of doing so now. He averted his gaze and ran his fingers through his hair in an effort to calm down. Finally, his wife stomped forward, whispering, "Bill, please, let's talk." He was so angry that he was trembling and gasping for air. The silence was unbearable for them both. Who needs to shut up now? His voice seemed to strike her hard, but he seemed unconcerned. For far too long, he disregarded the warning signs and pretended everything was all right. But now, staring back at him, was the truth. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered, her eyes betraying her sadness. He shook his head and pretended to laugh, but in reality he was sick and felt as if the earth had parted beneath him, leaving him on the brink of something terrifying and unknown. He inhaled deeply and ran his palm over his face to alleviate the pain. As he stepped out the door, the chill of the night air washed over him like a wave. He needed to get away, to gather his thoughts and figure out what to do next. His world had just collapsed around him. One thought lingered in his mind as he drove off into the night. Things would never be the same. I love that you sang our songs or any religious songs for the first time at home. You feel compelled to perform them across the nation because they are deeply ingrained in your soul. This is the message. Music, in my opinion, is a form of portable theology. Even when we're at the supermarket or the bathroom, we have it on hand. Every time you're feeling down, it's always the words to an old hymn or gospel song that lift you up. Not only do I also speak and write other things, but songs also play in our heads. With this medley, Ernie is the first one. Bill and I take great pride in the honesty of our songwriting, believing that if our music can bring solace in times of crisis, then it must be genuine. I agree. That's all. Does the first one seem very godlike? All right, I've decided. Okay, we can't record all of these songs, so let's go through and get a medley and sing a little bit of some of your better ones. You did record "He Touched Me" and "Because He Lives" as whole songs, and I'm about to mention something else, but how can we gain access to some of these other songs? The fans were shocked, furious, and conflicted when they heard the news of Bill Gaither's discovery. The church society was in a state of complete chaos. A tale that sounded too fantastical to be true started out as a whisper. Bill Gaither had devoted his life to creating a musical and familial legacy that would last for generations. Upon entering, he discovered his wife in the company of another woman. This was completely unexpected, and word quickly spread across social media. Initially, many fans didn't believe it and referred to it as fake news. People went so far as to claim that news outlets deliberately fabricated the story in order to tarnish Bill's reputation. They had always looked up to Bill and his wife as a model Christian couple and the perfect example of a happy marriage. That such a horrible deceit could take place in their own house is beyond their comprehension. Loved ones of the Gaither posted many heartfelt messages and throwback photos of the pair on social media, sharing stories of how the Gaither had impacted their lives. People hoped that the truth would be revealed soon. They were holding out hope that Bill would admit fault and set the record straight. But those expectations started to dwindle as more details emerged. Family members and friends verified that what transpired actually occurred and that Bill was in a terrible mental state when he left the house. His fellow drivers claimed he needed time to process what he had witnessed, so he was driving aimlessly that evening. Unnamed but close friend of Bill's told reporter he had never seen Bill so downcast. When that happened, a lot of people finally grasped the gravity of the situation. What you were reading wasn't fiction, it was fact. The reactions were immediate and powerful. Anger reached boiling point for some fans, who proceeded to scold Bill's wife. Her neighbors accused her of lying and said she had betrayed her husband and the faith they had taught for many years. How could she do this to him? A distraught fan wrote in a Facebook post, "After everything they've been through, after everything he's done for their family, this is how she repays him?" Further, some claimed that she had been continuously deceiving her fans. If she was willing to lie to Bill for who knows how long, how do we know she hasn't been lying to all of us too? A companion inquired. Swiftly, the wrath directed at her intensified. She lost the support of some Christian organizations that had previously assisted her. Her scheduled events were subtly postponed. In an effort to piece together what was happening behind closed doors, it became fashionable to review previous actions and conversations. Viewing every event from the past through a different lens, fans attempted to make sense of the shocking betrayal. Bill was not universally agreed upon, though. According to an opposing camp of viewers, the level of animosity was excessive. People ought to keep their personal lives private, and the truth about marital problems remained hidden. Some stated, "We don't know her side of the story," urging readers to refrain from making assumptions. The Christian community's reaction was seen by some as excessively severe. They argued that passing judgment and condemnation were wrong. On Twitter, someone pondered, "Didn't Jesus preach love and forgiveness?" Others pondered Bill's career prospects in light of this. Maybe we should stop throwing stones and start praying instead. Is he going to try to escape all the stares? How dedicated and enthusiastic would he be to leading prayer after such a deceit? There was widespread concern that he would undergo an irreversible transformation as a result of this story. Many anticipated that he would channel his deepest feelings of despair and anguish into his music, creating works of profound emotional impact. A lot of people on the internet speculated about Bill's future moves. Do you think he would pursue a divorce? Was he going to make a public statement about it? On the other hand, would he opt to remain silent and conceal his suffering from all? Many different opinions were voiced by the fans. While some wanted him to address the situation publicly, others felt he should keep quiet for the time being. Meanwhile, news outlets aired sensationalized coverage of the incident. From major news outlets to gossip websites, the headlines were everywhere. Talk shows featured experts discussing the impact of scandals like this on religious celebrities and whether Bill Gaither's reputation would ever completely recover. Some reporters attempted to grab more attention by writing dramatic headlines like "Betrayal in the Gospel World," "Bill Gaither's Heartbreak in the Scandal That Rocked Christian Music." This was obviously becoming more than just an individual issue. Everyone now had an opinion since it had become a public spectacle. Despite everything that was happening, one thing persisted. People were still rooting for Bill. Supportive messages from thousands of his online friends flooded his inbox. Some individuals texted Bible verses. Someone else shared their own story of overcoming heartache and deceit. Many people simply assured him that they were thinking about him and praying for him, assuring him that his influence would not be measured by the actions of others. Some churches even went so far as to organize prayer vigils in his honor. The phrase, "We stand with Bill," quickly gained traction among his supporters. People from all walks of life expressed their sorrow over his passing on social media for days. Many prominent figures in the Christian music industry and the church expressed their support. He received heartfelt texts and phone calls from people who wanted to console him. The thing is, Bill remained silent the entire time. Days turned into weeks, and he remained silent in public. His devoted followers were understandably concerned, wondering aloud whether he was all right, if he was quietly processing everything, or had he simply given up. Additional rumors were spread due to the absence of communication. Many assumed he was plotting a triumphant return and would take a firm stance on the matter. He seemed to have retired from public life, according to some. But this moment had altered everything. That much was obvious. No matter what Bill did, whether he returned to the stage, shared his story, or remained silent, his name would forever be associated with this tragic scandal. While they waited for Bill Gaither to do something next, everyone was wondering, what would he do?